Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Google Pixel 7a and see how this particular phone holds up in 2025. Now, first things first, what I can definitely tell you is that in my personal opinion, from what I'm seeing, the Google Pixel 7a is still a very interesting device to say the least. It's one of those types of phones that you can basically go through and, still kind of look at, you can still have a really good time with. There might be some other better options that we'll take a look at throughout this whole entire video. But first things first, if you want to pick up this phone or some other phones that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Starting off with the outside of both these particular phones, or just the Pixel 7a. This phone originally came out back in 2023. And when you're taking a look at this phone, the first thing you're going to have to remember is that this type of device for the most part does do a pretty good job at kind of giving you like a pretty decent type of layout on the exterior. So it's still giving you a 6.1 inch OLED display. It's nothing crazy, but it definitely is still a nice display. This thing is a 90 Hz display as well. So that does kind of mean that it is a pretty good looking display in and of itself because it's 90 Hz. It gives you a pretty good experience from that side. And I do think that is kind of a big thing to kind of keep in mind there from that particular situation when it kind of comes down to it from that front. Now on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that within this type of phone, you're going to have to remember that it's still giving you a pretty good type of layout, but it is a little bit of a different type of layout than what you're getting inside of like the current generation Pixel 9s. The Pixel 9s basically are giving you these like curved corners, which I like a lot. These, devices like the Google Pixel 7a, this one's a little bit different, right? This one's more so kind of like a, squared off corners. So that is just one of those things you're going to have to kind of keep in mind there when it comes down to from that side. Now on top of that, when it comes down to their sides of this phone is completely built out of aluminum. But the kind of issue that you're kind of running into this phone with is that it does have a plastic back on the backside. So that is kind of something that is kind of interesting because inside of this type of device, you are basically going through and getting a phone that is essentially a little bit of a different type of device, right? This one is more of like a plastic back type of phone. So if you're trying to get a phone that is giving you a little bit of a better experience, well, this one might not quite be the one that's going to be giving you a great experience from that side. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but that could be one thing that you might end up seeing here from this particular situation. And I would just recommend kind of keep that in mind when we go through and like buy this phone. So from that side too, that kind of covers it up there as well. There's not really anything else like super insane or super crazy going on for this particular device. But that was just kind of one of those things to kind of keep in mind there when you're going through and kind of looking at this device from the exterior. On top of those things, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that this phone is essentially giving you wireless charging, which is great, but it is not giving you any sort of reverse wireless charging, which that in and of itself is kind of unfortunate because if you were to go through and pick up a phone, you'd probably want to still be able to buy a phone that is going to be giving you a little bit of a better experience here. And that is essentially what's going on here for the most part as well. So this type of device, you are kind of running into a situation where it's not really giving you like the most extreme, like best types of software features for the most part, or even hardware features. And that's just kind of what's going to end up happening here if you're going to go through and like pick up this type of device. So from that personal situation, that kind of covers it up there too. Nothing crazy, but just one of those small things to keep in mind there. So when it comes down to the exterior, I'm still a big fan of this type of phone. The price tag of this phone also isn't really like super insane. Like it is actually like a pretty decent, priced phone. It's probably like less than $200 on Amazon, which I think is a nice price to pay for this type of phone too. So from that side as well, that kind of covers it up there. Now on top of that, when it comes down to the cameras, this phone, like I mentioned before, is giving you a dual camera setup on the backside, a 64 megapixel wide angle lens, then a 13 megapixel ultra wide camera. And on the front side, it's giving you a 13 megapixel ultra wide camera. So this is going to be one of those types of situations, once again, to kind of keep your head on strong with and kind of remember about, because this is going to be one of those types of devices that you're going to look at and actually still have a really, really good time with. So I do genuinely think that this type of camera is actually not bad because you're getting 4K at 60 on the back. You are getting 4K at 30 on the front, and I will be honest, it would be kind of nicer to be able to go ahead and get a device that maybe was giving you a little bit of a better experience than that 4K at 30 on the front. But I would probably say for the most part too, like it's not the biggest deal in the world, but like I said, it would just have been kind of a nicer thing to have a little bit of better capability when it comes down to it from that side. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you're going to go through and pick up this type of phone, I do think it's still is a pretty good looking phone for the most part from that side as well. And the photos and videos that it takes still aren't, they're still pretty good when it comes down to it from that side. So from that particular situation, that kind of covers it up there as well. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to their software longevity, the greatest things, or one of the greatest things about Pixels, is that they do end up lasting for quite some time. So from an Android perspective, they're probably some of the longest lasting Android phones. But the thing you're going to have to remember here is that if you are going to go through and pick up something like one of these types of devices, you're going to have to remember that this type of device, although it's still supported with software, it's not really going to be lasting as long compared to some of the other Android phones that have came out. We take a look at something like the Google Pixel 8 and the Google Pixel 9. Those phones are going to be very, very long lasting devices when it comes down to it. And I do think from that side, that is kind of one of those very important things to keep in mind there, because if you are the phone that it's going to be lasting for a longer period of time, it probably is going to be something like a Google Pixel 8 or 9 or a Samsung Galaxy S24 or S25. So I don't want to just do this comparison thing where you're looking at these two phones and just getting the newer one because it's better. But in some situations, that could just be one thing to kind of keep in mind there. On top of that, the battery size inside of this phone, it's about a 4,385 milliamp battery. That is also like a pretty good sized battery to have inside of a device too. So if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, you're actually going to be getting like a pretty well designed and pretty good fast phone inside of this type of device, which, like I mentioned before, I think is a really, really nice thing to basically have inside of a phone too when it comes down to it. So, from that side, that kind of covers it up there. When it also comes down to its performance, this phone is going to be giving you that Google Tensor G2 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So luckily for us, this phone from that particular situation is actually going to be giving you like a pretty good and pretty fast phone, in my personal opinion, from what I'm seeing. So if you are going to go through and like pick up a device, I do think from that particular situation, this type of phone does actually give you like a really fast phone from that particular side when it comes down to it. And I do think that is a really, really big thing to kind of keep in mind there from that particular situation. So if I'm going to go through and pick up a phone, I actually do like having phones like this because they do give me like very fast, very great capability. And I do think, like I said, if you're going to go through and buy a device, this is something that's actually really, really nice in and of itself. So in my personal opinion, right, if I'm looking at something like a Google Pixel 7a, this is easily one of those types of phones that I would look at. And I do think I would still recommend people to buy it. I think it's a beautiful phone. I think it looks great. And I do think for the most part, if you're going to go through and pick up a device like this, you're probably still going to have a really, really good time with it, right? It's one of those phones that you could go and buy, you could still pick up and still have an amazing time with it, like internally and externally. There might be some other devices that might be better though for the most part. I do think like a Google Pixel 8 and 8a it is a pretty big upgrade from this, especially a Google Pixel 8a. I think that phone is really, really worth buying. I think this one is very good too. Like it's a very, very good solid device, but I think the Pixel 7a is good. It's a great phone, but I do think something like the Pixel 8a or the Pixel 8 for that matter is the better one here for the most part. And I'd probably recommend a vast majority of people to go and buy those ones. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.